In a down economy like the one we've been seeing for the last few years, homelessness is increasingly an issue that we're realizing can touch anyone, anywhere, at any time. There are a lot of reasons why someone can become homeless, and it can range from a temporary situation to something chronic and ongoing. There are innovative programs that are being developed right now across the country to try to eradicate this chronic homelessness. One of these is called Housing First. These programs specifically address helping people who've been homeless for an extended period of time get off the street and find stability. And we have Andy and Amy here today to talk with us about Housing First and some efforts that are happening here in the Vancouver community. So we're going to find out a little bit more about the problem and then talk about ways that our community is trying to address it. So welcome. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Andy, I was hoping that you could take a minute first to tell us about Housing First and what those kinds of solutions look like.
Sure. Well, Housing First is a model that's actually been around now for about 15 years nationally. And the idea is that in the old model, an outreach worker would find somebody living on the street. They have lots of challenges. Maybe they've been living outside for a few years. And they'd try to work with that person to tackle everything that was going on in their lives. So if they had a drinking problem, try to get them clean. If they had a mental health issue, try to get them the help that they need. But what we found is that didn't really work very often. Because when somebody's living in a park or in an encampment, when they're dealing with the elements, hopefully they're not wearing shorts, it's very hard for them to tackle those issues and to get healthy. So Housing First kind of flipped that on its head and said, what we're going to do is we're going to give somebody a key to an apartment. We're going to say, your problem primarily is that you don't have housing. And then once you're in that safe, warm environment, we're going to give you the services that you need, connect you to the services you need to kind of move forward with your life.
Okay. So I know that we have a development that's in the works here in Vancouver. I believe it's the Lincoln Place project that is going to be over in the Houck neighborhood. And this is a Housing First program that is being developed right now.
Yep.
And so the way this works then is basically there's not necessarily a qualifier. Somebody who is chronically homeless can get an apartment right away.
Right.
I know that some of the people who've been concerned about solutions like this, we've heard things like people are like, well, they're getting something for nothing. There's no, why are we paying for that? But then I've also heard that in a lot of ways this is actually cheaper than what we're doing right now in terms of our police force and the way that we're dealing with homelessness right now, and also other resources. And I was wondering if either of both of you could tell me more about that. How would we actually save money as a community by using Housing First?
Do you want me to get it started? And then, sure. So basically, there have been lots of studies on Housing First. That's a nice thing. It's basically the most evidence-based practice that we have in tackling homelessness. And what the studies show is that when people are living outside, taxpayers are paying for them to live outside. And it's much more expensive than subsidizing someone's rent. And it's expensive because of police interventions for sort of life crimes like urinating outside. It's expensive because of using ERs for healthcare purposes if people don't have insurance. The folks who are chronically homeless utilize a higher percentage of all the different services, whether it's shelter beds throughout. So that's kind of the idea behind it.
So Amy, can you talk a little bit about the police interaction with the homeless population and what we're doing now and how we can see it changing with this kind of solution?
Sure. Most of the people that we interact with that are chronically homeless tend to have some other abuse issue going on or addiction issue going on, whether it's mental health, the drug and alcohol issues. It tends not to just be a fiscal issue for them.
Yeah.
And so when we interact with them, we've become over-dependent on hospitals and jails to be the fix, as we've seen reductions in other services. So the answer quickly becomes, as they're intoxicated or they're acting out, they're a danger to themselves or others, we have to fix that. And so that's either a trip to the jail or a trip to the hospital. Those are very expensive services, but we really don't have any other fixes in place for them. And that can be the person who is intoxicated that we have to do something with, because we all have a responsibility for their well-being. Inside of a residence, that might be a different story in terms of who's responsible for that person and what that answer is. And so we do know that many of the people that we interact with, they do take several trips in a month's time to the emergency room, which tends to be very expensive, not to mention you have the ambulance tied up, you have the police tied up, you typically have the fire department tied up. We have a gentleman in our community who is the #1 draw on emergency services within the state of Washington.
Oh, wow.
I think I didn't get the 2013, but the 2012 tab on him was almost $500,000.
Oh my goodness, on just one person.
On one individual that actually and it didn't go without us trying to solve that problem. It came down that the answer was, when all the emergency services were put together with the hospital in place, that he could be limited to 1 trip per day to that medical facility, because you can't deny a person that service. Right. And so if we have an opportunity to try something different than what we've been doing that could reduce, will you take somebody who calls 911 every day for service and reduce them to no calls? No, that's not going to happen. But if you can reduce them by 1/3 or by half, there's some significant tax savings to be had there.
So, sorry, I just completely lost. I had a question and then I started listening. No. So I thought it was interesting. At one point we were talking, Andy, and you had mentioned that there are 1 or 2 communities that have actually been able to eradicate chronic homelessness by using Housing First as a model. And I was wondering if you could tell me, because I can't remember which town it was.
So Phoenix and Salt Lake City had a competition to see who could eradicate chronic homelessness among veterans first as the first step. And Phoenix won. They met their goal of 0 just before Christmas. They had started with 232 identified chronically homeless veterans on their streets. And Utah, the entire state, with Salt Lake taking the lead, is now at a 78% reduction in chronic homelessness. And they're hoping to finish the job by next year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So with the Lincoln Place development that we're talking about for Vancouver, what effect would that have on our chronically homeless population here?
We do a count once a year where we have street teams go out and we try to count everyone who's homeless in our community. The last count last year found about 80 chronically homeless folks. And Lincoln Place is just sort of one tool in the toolbox. So we're confident that with that and some other projects that we're working on, we could, be that next community to get it down to 0.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, so what is the status of the Lincoln Place project right now? Where is that in?
So Vancouver Housing Authority and their nonprofit Vancouver Affordable Housing are the developer, are going to develop it and own it, and they have some applications in to different tax credits and things to pay for it. So they're going to hear about those, and then I think put in some permitting to the city this spring, and hopefully construction will start in the fall and it will open the following year.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like a really interesting solution, and something that we hear over and over is if you keep doing things the same way you've always done them, you're going to get the same results you've always gotten. So it's interesting to think about the possibility that we might be doing things a little differently and possibly taking a step to solve some of the problems we've got. So thank you both for joining us. It's been fantastic to talk with you. Andy Silver, Executive Director for the Council for the Homeless, Commander Amy Foster from the Vancouver Police Department. Please give them a round of applause.